I'm Sal Greco, and you're watching and listening to the Sal Greco Show. If you're watching this right now on YouTube, please hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button. If you're watching on Rumble, hit the Rumble button, hit the like button. And if you're listening on any major podcast streaming platform, please hit the like button, share, and subscribe. I have a special guest, and that's John Macari of the Finest Unfiltered podcast. And we're going to be discussing a lot of news. So here we go. So here we are on Dress Down Friday with my friend and co-host of the Finest Unfiltered podcast, former NYPD lieutenant, now retired, thankfully, John Macari. Welcome back to the Sal Greco Show, John.
Hey, Sal, pleasure to be here, brother. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, John. I hope you had a safe one. I know you were up in New York, and hey, New York has had quite a mystery surrounding it in the last couple of days, if not weeks, with all their scandals. So that's why I wanted to bring you on, John. Obviously, we've been on the forefront of the scandal, so I was going to show you a couple of things and get your take on it. So first thing up here is this gentleman. This is Paul J. Saraceno. So I put this out, I believe it was on a Wednesday. This was on New Year's Day that I put this out, and I'll read this off for you. Allegedly, NYPD Deputy Chief Paul J. Saraceno, Executive Officer of Chief of Department Office, is now modified. He would be the police supervisor who probably endorsed the majority of Lieutenant Epps' overtime. His service record includes pleading guilty to misuse of time, where he was not suspended but disciplined. So why is Epps suspended, facing termination, if Saraceno wasn't for his misuse of time case? There also should be a UF-49, unusual report, discussing the auditing of Lieutenant Epps' overtime, prepared by Deputy Chief Theodore E. Fedorov, commanding officer of the Chief of Department's office, to support the overtime of Epps. Somehow, First Deputy Commissioner Tanya Kinsella wasn't interested in the other high-wage earners in other offices, such as Chief of Patrol or Deputy Commissioner of Operations. So why aren't Kinsella, Jeffrey Maddrey, Fedorov, and Saraceno suspended? New York City taxpayers have a right to know the reasoning behind NYPD Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch's logic, hashtag the Sal Greco Show. And I have on the screen here Paul Saraceno's record. Here he is. He worked in Brooklyn South. Also, here is his discipline. As you can see, in 2020, he has a misuse of time case. He pled guilty. He lost deduction of pensionable time, forfeiture of time, leave balances, and 30 vacation days. And I'm saying that this is, how can I say this? I don't think it's right that we're going after one person saying they misuse time, and then we have another that got away and got promoted. And just for the record here, I wanted to show that is the modified order for Saraceno, and I posted this right after. It was like literally after I posted one, then everybody started receiving this message on their phone that was in the know, so to speak. And I posted, as I was saying, there it is, he was modified. So, John, before anything else, because I know there's a lot more to this, what are your thoughts on that, along with Saraceno and the whole Chief of Department and what's going on there?
I think we're going to change Paul's name to Paul the Fall Guy Saraceno, because that's exactly what he is. He's the fall guy for the corruption at the top that came out of Chief Jeffrey Maddrey's office and the upper echelon and the entire upper echelon of the NYPD, First Deputy Commissioner's office, Chief of Patrol's office, Chief of Department's office, Deputy Commissioner Operations office, as well as the Deputy Commissioner of Public Information, all had an overtime scandal that was budding. And when you see this, what do you see? You see Epps and you put Saraceno together, and what does it tell you? It's arbitrary. Discipline in the NYPD is arbitrary. The way that we investigate cases in the NYPD is arbitrary, and it's dependent upon who you know. And so the police commissioner, internal affairs, are actually playing games in these investigations. Because like you said, if Epps was suspended, then Saraceno should have been suspended. Then Fedorov should have been suspended. Then Maddrey should have been suspended. Then Kinsella should have been suspended. Then Daughtry should have been suspended. Then Shell should have been. But we have some of them getting promoted, some of them getting untouched, some people in their offices getting transferred, some people aren't. None of it makes sense. None of it makes sense. And what I see is a reverse engineered investigation being done so that Saraceno and Epps could bear the weight of responsibility for all the corruption at the top.
Yeah, I actually was thinking exactly what you just said, because when we were actually, as this came out in the news, you know, me and John, obviously we talk offline, and we were saying, this is a setup. I think it's a setup. No, if you go after Paul Saraceno here, first of all, why is he's only modified? What about Fedorov, who was his boss and had to have written that 49, right? Can you explain just for 1 second what a 49 is? Because you probably wrote a lot of them in your career.
49 is just a uniformed report. It's just the standard reporting for the NYPD. If I need to report a major incident, or even not a major incident, just any style of report that I'm going to report, whether it's about overtime use, whether it's about a shooting, whether it's about a missing kid, whatever it is, it's just a uniform style of reporting, meaning, you know, how it's titled, and the outline of the report. That's all UF 49 means, is a report.
So that report would have been written from the commanding officer of the chief of department's office at this time, which was Fedorov, in regards to why Epps is allowed, or she somehow is allowed to make more than other people, correct?
Well, I don't think for 1 second that everyone, not only Fedorov, but Maddrey himself, knew exactly what Epps was doing. So it's to put the blame on Saraceno, even if he was the supervisor that signed off on it. It's not a coincidence that Jeffrey Maddrey, who admitted to having a sexual relationship in the office with Epps, it's not a coincidence that she happened to be the top earner. It's not Paul Saraceno's fault that she was the top earner. It was Jeffrey Maddrey's fault now she was the top earner. Now, is Paul Saraceno complicit? Oh, absolutely. Is Fedorov complicit? Absolutely. But he's not the player. And the fact that he was modified, but Epps was suspended, makes absolutely no sense. And then fast forward to Jeffrey Maddrey, we've been saying, how the hell is this guy not suspended or even modified, right? Because even after the Saraceno order came out, we're like, why the hell is he not? Why is Maddrey not modified then or suspended? None of this makes sense. There's no standard in the NYPD. Everything in the Adams administration is arbitrary and capricious. Some people have to comply with the mandate, others don't. Some people could criminally associate, others can't. Some people could not supervise, others can't. Some people could steal overtime, others can't. So it's just the theme of the Adams administration, arbitrary and capricious. NYPD is the biggest drivers of that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I find it amazing how they always do this. It's always the same person or two different people commit the same infraction and could be completely treated differently in like the worst way, like opposites. And it should be, one equal, it's an equal opportunity job. So it's supposed to be one, punishment is equal for all, but apparently not. And now we're going to get into something else, because you mentioned the key person in this case, Jeffrey Maddrey. So something happened, and I'm going to share it. And here is the police commissioner, right? This, I guess it was the day after New Year's, is right here. At my direction, this is from her. At my direction, the Internal Affairs Bureau of the New York City Police Department is working with law enforcement authorities to investigate allegations against former Chief of Department Jeffrey Maddrey. Maddrey was suspended from the department this morning as law enforcement agents executed search warrants at several locations, including his residence. Any further inquiries about this matter should be directed to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, Jessica S. Tisch, Police Commissioner. And just for good measures here, I want to put the actual, I'm going to put the order up so people realize it really happened. There it is. Right there is the order, and I posted it as it's official, although many days too late. That's the finest message. Jeffrey Maddrey suspended from duty. Now, John, I know you've had a lot to digest here in the last couple, days just with all this stuff. What is your take on all of this? Because obviously we were talking about just now about Paul Saraceno, and now you see that Jeffrey Maddrey was suspended and raided by the feds.
Well, and that was the reason that he was ultimately suspended, is the NYPD had absolutely no choice. In the past, what we've seen with NYPD investigations is they're arbitrary, right? Like one case is different from another, right? Well, which we just talked about. But here, what's unusual and what we're seeing and what's being brought to light here is individuals involved in the same case are being treated completely differently. So Jeffrey Maddrey was going to skate. He put his papers in to retire. There's no way in hell there wasn't an IAB log and an investigation into the allegations that were made against him by Lieutenant Epps. So that should have flagged, and he should have immediately either been suspended or modified pending his investigation, meaning that he wouldn't be allowed to retire in good standing with the NYPD if he made it past his 30 days, because members of the NYPD, if they're in tier 2 or tier 2A, they have to give the job 30 days notice prior to retiring. So Jeffrey Maddrey was allowed to put his papers in and retire. If that was anyone else, like we saw with Lieutenant Epps, she put her papers in and then was suspended. Now Jeffrey Maddrey's home gets raided yesterday morning, early in the morning, and what happens as a result of that, the NYPD had absolutely no choice now but to suspend him. And because they have to save their own face. Like, oh my God, like why, because forget about it. We've been saying, why hasn't he been suspended? Now the entire media will be asking why he hasn't been suspended after the FBI raid, because now it appears that not only administratively is there a case that he has a problem with, it appears that he has a big problem criminally as well. So there was no way. So in order to save face, Eric Adams and Jessica Tisch suspended Jeffrey Maddrey. It had nothing to do with them acting on their own. They did it completely as a result of Jeffrey Maddrey's home being raided. And it clearly shows how arbitrary Jeffrey Maddrey has been treated. He's been treated. He was going to let walk, and none of this was going to come to an issue if not for the Fed stepping in.
So also now, you would also say, because I did watch your show. I hope people check it out on this issue, because actually John and Eric Dim, his co-hosts on the Finest Unfiltered podcast, they were live as this happened. Okay, so just for the record, I want to point out that we're going to discuss him in a little bit. The current chief of department, John Schell, was supposed to be on Sid and Friends in the morning, and it was 7:15 in the morning, and he never appeared. So there's some kind of chaos back there. So as this is all going on, the feds were at multiple locations in regards to Jeffrey Maddrey, and John and Eric are reporting on this. He had his whole show, and I want you people, if you can, go back to watch the show. And they're talking about this in it's live as this is going on, as this raid happens. And John was bringing up one point that I haven't heard anyone else bring up either. John, are they just raiding him because of this quote unquote quid pro quo with sexual harassment? Or do you believe there's something more than just that?
Oh, I believe there's a lot more than just that. So, being that we're former officers, any sex act, any sex crime could possibly fall to state investigation, but more than likely it would stay in where it occurred. We know that it occurred in the city. We know that it occurred in Manhattan, so it would fall on the DA Alvin Bragg's office. The fact that the feds are stepping in, and this is purely speculative, this is just speculative on my opinion. I believe that it has something to do with the misuse of funds, particularly federal funds, because it's been alleged that the overtime that was being traded for sexual favors and other grift was federal dollars. they were using a federal overtime code to basically do this quid pro quo. And that would explain to me why the feds are involved. There are other crimes involved in here other than just the misuse of an employee, the abuse of an employee, other than just even official misconduct, which it is. There's numerous other crimes in here, but the fact that the feds are investigating and not the city or not the state shows you there is something else here.
You were the first to point this out, and I actually was thinking, you are right. So then the next question is, the person in this police department that would be in charge of these codes and the budget, isn't that the first deputy commissioner, Tanya Kinsella?
Based upon her sworn testimony, I mean, we all know that it's the first deputy commissioner office, but she actually testified to it in front of city council at the last budget hearing that overtime is her responsibility. It's her job as the first deputy commissioner to oversee overtime. She has a bi-weekly meeting, meaning 2 times a week. They sit down, they discuss the highest overtime earners in the NYPD, and then they go to the bureau heads, the bureau or borough heads, and bring in to have them explain why these people made so much overtime. So how did we miss Lieutenant Epps? How did we miss all of the top earners in her own office, by the way?
Yeah.
In Kaz Daughtry's office, the Deputy Commissioner of Operation, in Chief Jeffrey Maddrey's office, in also Chief John Shell's office, and the Deputy Commissioner of Public Information at the time, Tariq Shepard. How did they miss that if they're meeting 2 times a week, and this is her responsibility, and the highest earners have to be accounted for and why they're making overtime? And now they're going to play like, oh, we didn't know. We didn't know that Lieutenant Epps was making all this money. It must be Paul the Fall Guy's fault. I'm not buying it. Nobody else should be,
Yeah, you bring up another point, because I'm going to throw in another bureau that has a ton of overtime we saw on that list, and that was Internal Affairs, where we have the chief of Internal Affairs, Miguel Iglesias, again, relieved of his duties. Why not suspended? So John, and you explain this, Jeffrey Maddrey suspended, but he'll still see his pension. But right now, if they were to suspend all these people like Tanya Kinsella and Kaz Daughtry and John Shell, and Tariq Shepard, they're all involved in this somehow, one way or another, and Miguel Iglesias, they wouldn't see a pension, am I right? Because then they have a chance of being arrested while still active in the NYPD, albeit suspended. Am I right?
So we have to give 30 days notice. If there was a way to investigate that case within 30 days, they could be terminated, and then their pension, if they're past 20, which Kaz Daughtry isn't, but the rest of them are, if they're past 20, they would still be entitled to collect their pension and their benefits as long as they weren't convicted of a felony. However, they would not be retired in good standing with the New York City Police Department, meaning they would lose their carry license, they would not get a retired ID card, nor get a good guy letter, or what's known as basically as a letter stating you retired in good standing with the NYPD. But one thing we got to point out, these are the firsts in the Eric Adams administration.
Yep.
First indicted mayor. Now we have the first chief of department ever suspended. First 3-star chief ever suspended. First chief of internal affairs to be relieved of duty.
That is incredible. That is incredible. and I'll tell you another thing. This is yet another person under the Eric Adams umbrella that is part of his administration, or we're going to call him the Consofrito network that was raided. We've already saw a few months ago, Eddie Caban was a police commissioner now. Nobody wants to mention his name, but listen, he was the first deputy commissioner and then the police commissioner while Jeffrey Maddrey was running wild. So he's gonna come back into the scene very soon. But they were raided. A lot of their cronies, a lot of Caban's cronies were raided. Some that went under the radar, they didn't want to tell you about. But they're all part of this Consofrito clique or whatever you want to call it. And here's another guy that just got raided again, was frequenting that place like it was going out of style, somehow frequenting with felons and criminals. And they kept their job, even Jeffrey Maddrey. So I actually have a question, which will come into play very soon in depositions with Keyshawn Sewell. Why wasn't Jeffrey Maddrey terminated, but you terminated me? This will be a hot topic question. And speaking of all these things, New Year's Eve, somehow, we had a ceremony. I don't know who saw it, but there was a ceremony anointing John Schell as the chief of department and Philip Rivera, or we could call him Philip Consofrito Rivera, getting anointed as the chief of patrol. So, John, knowing this, now knowing that John Schell is named, he's named in this case, Lieutenant Epps, in her statement and her allegation to EEOC, which is the prelude, it's before the lawsuit, has already referenced John Schell and Kaz Daughtry, Tiny Kinsella, and a lieutenant who also is running for the door, Leslie A. Traynor. But John Schell in particular is named. Yet, he was promoted. Rivera promoted, even though we know that he's, good buddies with a mob associate and self-admitted criminal who's threatening you just a year ago this month. What are your thoughts on that? Because that is, I don't know, that's outrageous to me.
It shows exactly that Jessica Tisch is not what everybody was hoping she was going to be. She's not that Teddy Roosevelt figure that comes from a rich family, is going to clean up the New York City Police Department. It shows that Eric Adams is still running the New York City Police Department. To promote John Schell, the chief of patrol, is like giving the axe to John Gotti and then promoting Sammy the Bull Gravano to run things and say, oh, Sammy's here to clean it up. It absolutely makes no sense. Should not happen, would not happen, could not happen. If you were looking to either improve morale, if you were looking to clean up corruption, or you were looking to provide public safety. All that happened here is musical chairs. And it's a horrible appointment, in my opinion. And I said originally when he was named as the interim, I said appointing him to chief of patrol is like taking Michael Dowd's partner during the Marlin Commission and making him the chief of internal affairs and expecting that the New York City Police Department's going to be cleaned up. He knows where all the bodies are. He knows all the secrets. Mm-hmm. He knows everything. And by the way, John Schell admitted numerous times, and if anybody needs the information, let me know. Gladly put it out on social media, where he said over and over again, my mentor is Jeff Maddrey. My mentor and my good friend is Jeff Maddrey. So if we're sitting here and we're trampling all over Jeff Maddrey like the media is, like the police commissioner is, like everybody is, how the hell is John Schell being absolved of all his sins? They're thick as thieves. I don't understand it.
Listen, I have numerous people that have actually reached out to me, and they're either retired or even current. We'll keep their names out of this, but they're completely disgusted knowing that John Schell got promoted, and Philip Rivera, because they all said the same thing. Philip Rivera is a friend of a mob associate and a self-admitted criminal that somehow, despite the fact that you wrote a letter due to the fact that not only him threatening you, we had some other bizarre cop or whatever he was using a moniker online to threaten you and your children and Eric Dim, yet nothing ever happened out of that. And in fact, John, I know that the people involved in that in internal affairs were transferred. I don't know if you want to get into that a little bit, but I know, I don't know what's going on with this department. They seem to reward bad behavior. John Schell being one of the main culprits, who, by the way, is also involved with these people because I have him pictured right next to the mob associate. So it's unbelievable how they're all being rewarded for the same behavior. I don't get it. I don't get this promotion. I don't. Jessica Tisch, the fake red herring. That's what we call her. She's a billionaire puppet. That's my favorite line.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's arbitrary and capricious. I don't know Phil Rivera from a hole in the wall, but I know one thing about Phil Rivera. He criminally associated the same thing that you were fired for, right? He criminally associated. There could only be one standard. I was told in the police department that if discipline is not equal, it's discriminatory. So clearly what we're seeing is clear discrimination against all of us, right? And then when you look at the Internal Affairs Bureau, I lodged a complaint against their good friend, the upper echelon of the NYPD, because he's threatening me for reasons unbeknown to me. And I made the allegation that it was coming from the police commissioner, John Shell, Kaz Daughtry, and a few others. And the reason I did that is because they had their staff calling around, asking where I work, asking where I live. They had community members reaching out to me. They used on-duty cops that were on overtime to go on my social media to slander and defame me. And, I laughed at it all. I wasn't going to do anything or file any complaints, but I was like, wow, this is ridiculous. I have actual identified cops and their legal team, by the way, using their own names, coming on social media, making up lies, revealing personal information that you could only get by way of department computers. And I laughed it off at first until my kids started. They started threatening my kids' lives. And that's when I knew it was an active member of the service, which turned out to be an active supervisor in the NYPD. And until today, the NYPD, the Internal Affairs Bureau, has never released that person's name to me. And now I don't even know where the case lies or who it is, because the people that kept flip-flopping between reinvestigating my case and whatever it is, they're both no longer in the Internal Affairs Bureau. But that my main allegation was against John Shell. So he's in charge of the department, so I just expect more of the same. I expect some other lackey to come into the Internal Affairs Bureau in Group 1, take over my case, and stonewall the entire investigation. Like I said, and do the same thing that we're seeing what's being done with the accusations that Epps made, reverse engineering it, the outcome, to alleviate any type of culpability on the people that are actually doing it. And they'll probably get the lesser guys for dumb things like coming on my social media, cursing and saying stupid things.
Yeah, I also do it. They're in the chats on your shows all the time. The same nefarious. Yeah. They're in the chats, all the nefarious characters. So I didn't want to put this up on the screen. Now listen, John and Eric and myself, we do these. We're all part of the meme. We have memes. So this one was put out, and I find this hysterical. And it's here you go. That's John Shell. And the meme says, falling forward. I think this is the best way to describe this guy, because he kind of fell into this. There you see all the stars on the steps. I think this stuff is hysterical, John. And I tell you what, when it comes to the memes, just so people know, and I've gotten on this, we had a councilwoman, Vicky Palladino, get on John and Eric. She was with a guy I like to call a bootlicker news. You could, you want to waste your time, just research the guy. You'll see why we call him bootlicker. So the bootlicker was posting with her, and there's something else with John Shell and Kaz Daughtry standing right behind her. And she said that people that do racist memes, racist. So she's insinuating that John and Eric, and quite possibly myself, are racist, because John and Eric put memes up, and they're basically memes in regards to things that Mr. Eric Adams, as mayor of New York City, has said. He said, listen, Eric says some wild, crazy things. I don't know if he's doing it for clickbait. I don't know if he's serious, but he sounds crazy at times. So that's where the memes come from. Eric Adams he said it himself. Have you ever seen so much chocolate in an administration? It was Eric Adams who said that. And then a meme was made to make fun of him because of stuff he's saying that's actually derogatory to many people that have worked hard in their career to get where they're at. And he's just saying it's a chocolate administration. So he's throwing egg on your face, kind of, but he's trying to pump himself up to the low information voter. But here's Vicky Palladino jumping on that side. Yet she's standing next to two predators. John Shell and Kaz Daughtry are not only involved in the Lieutenant Epps' case, they're also involved in the Dana Ratchling case. And guess what? There are many rumors and future allegations to come, from what I understand, in regards to those two. Now, Vicky Palladino, as a councilwoman, can see all lawsuits filed against New York City. That's including my own, even John's has filed recently in regards to something else. We'll get to that. So don't tell me she doesn't see the lawsuits filed against John Shell and Kaz Daughtry, which are going to cost a lot of money to the taxpayers. And she's standing there saying, well, those guys are racist, but I'm a woman. I don't believe all women. I believe these two guys. back to blue. Hold on. Back to blue, put my blindfold on and cheer these two guys on. That's technically what was going on. Now, you could say she's negligent, she doesn't know anything, but she has a whole staff. Her chief of staff, you have all these people that work for her that do this all day long. So there's no excuse there. She actually should apologize to John and Eric. Or myself, I don't know. I don't really care. But for all intents and purposes, they were deemed racist. And they also got attacked by the Guardians, which is run by another guy, Patrick Gordon, who I don't know how he got promoted. That'll be another story for another day. But Patrick Gordon, he himself, we have him pictured, criminally associating himself, and somehow he keeps his job. But they all are silent when women come out and say, Eric Adams has sexually assaulted me. Tim Pearson has 4 of these lawsuits. You got John Schell. You have now Jeffrey Maddrey. I mean, the guy's mired in this stuff. And Kaz Daughtry. And they have nothing to say. So what do you say about all that, John? Because I think you were, deemed something, and it wasn't fair what was going on online. But they have a little network, like the bootlicker was the network, and John Schell, they have a little network, and they were trying to go against you. So it's more than just what I'm saying, where we had the mob associate and then the NYPD. It's like a whole network of clowns they have to try to combat the truth of what Eric and John are saying, which is basically an opinion. That's all it is.
I think for people, it's hard to understand the things that we're saying. I think as revelations come out, it's easier. It's easier for people to grasp. It's like, wait, these guys are telling me that the upper echelon of the NYPD is corrupt? How are you saying this? Because it's hard to believe. It honestly is. Yeah. But as the days and weeks and the months go on, everything that we've been saying for the last 2 or 3 years has came to fruition. So a meme came out after Eric Adams said that, this is the chocolate administration or whatever. And it was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and it was Eric Adams as Willy Wonka. Now, full disclosure, we didn't make that meme. We didn't even.
You're right. You didn't know. You didn't.
But I laughed at it and I shared it, and I think it went viral after we all shared it. And I was deemed a racist for it, even though nothing was said about Eric Adams making a comment. And I'm like, listen, I didn't make the meme, but I'll take credit for it because I thought it was hysterical and I shared it. I don't see anything wrong with it. How could you be mad at the meme, but you're not mad at the statement? It doesn't make sense to me. So, but what that did prove, and in full disclosure, I really have no hard feelings towards Vicky Palladino. I aligned with her politically. I agree with her on most issues. I don't agree with anybody all the time, but I think on most issues I agree with Vicky. But what it shows is that John Schell and Kaz Daughtry have a habit of going out and smearing people's names. And they weaponize groups to do it. They weaponize, because it wasn't just the Guardians. It wasn't just NOLA. It wasn't NOLA. It was the other organization. There was another police organization.
But Victoria Perry's in charge of that. Another Consofrito alumni herself.
There was another police organization that they weaponized on top of Vicky Palladino's office. But then there were community members in the Hasidic community in Borough Park in the 6-6, well as news outlets that were spreading this false propaganda that we were an openly racist platform, which is laughable, and I was like, okay, whatever. I was like, but it shows exactly what we've been saying is true. Exactly what Dana Rachlin put in her complaint is that John Schell and Kaz Daughtry smeared her name. Exactly what we said. Exactly what Epps is saying. Exactly what everybody's saying. These guys have a habit of whoever is the predator or whoever is guilty of anything, the way they deflect from the crimes they've committed is they go out and they smear the person who was victimized. So they re-victimize the victim. And that's what they do. So I think Vicky just got caught up in it and she was misinformed. I do think we deserve an apology, but at the end of the day, I really don't care because the truth comes out and everybody knows it. And she knows it as well. And I would hate to think that she knew that she was wrong when she was doing it then. I'd like to believe that she thought it was wrong. But I mean, we've been saying a lot of stuff for a long time, and everybody's been listening and following along and seeing who these people are. So it's a shame, man. It's a shame what happened, and it's a shame that we're allowing it. This is going to continue to happen because the person who's been smearing everyone, we just put in charge of the department.
That's the best part of the story is that, I don't know. I could only fathom to think, especially after seeing Eric Adams on the Corey Pegues show, whatever he calls it, Corey's Corner. And full disclosure, and I went over this with Eric Dim. I think you had the best description of it at the post show because I still can't see the replay of this. We watched it live. I think you hit the nail on every head. But in that show in particular, Eric Adams stated how he loved John Schell. And even though Corey is bringing up all the facts of his history, he was very pro John Schell. And I knew right there, well, there's your next chief of department. It was like a little insinuation. And I knew right there, Jessica Tisch has no say. I've said that all along. My best way of describing it is picture a room where she thinks she's in charge. So she walks in, she rearranges the furniture, but you can't paint the walls. That is up to the real boss, which is Eric Adams. And so that is the whole point of that. I don't know if you want to touch up on the Corey Pegues Corner with Eric Adams because there was so many wild things I heard there. And I think Corey did a good job. Like I said, he just asked the question and let him talk because that's the best thing you could do with Eric Adams. Let him talk because he'll talk his way into an indictment almost. He's just wild. So what did you think about that? Because I did put your post up, but now I have you here, so it's better to hear it from your mouth.
I thought it was hysterical, man. I was laughing the whole time. I thought it was a funny interview. I thought it was a good interview. He made the assertion that any criticism of him is a criticism of any black individual in leadership. It's completely laughable. I was on the chat. I think you were on the chat too. And I put in there, I was like, no, Eric, I'm saying that you can't run the city. Not that black people can't run the city. Don't get it twisted. Stop trying to play these games, because he racializes every conversation,
Yeah, he does. Every one of them. It doesn't
And then
matter.
he continues with the crime is down lie, because it's a lie. I mean, when you look at 2019 numbers, both in transit and on the street, crime is up through the roof. And then even this year, they closed out the year with crime slightly down. But we know that after the upgrades happen, crime will be up, just like every other year of the Eric Adams administration, and crime will continue because crime continues to rise under Eric Adams, and nobody wants to admit it. Even the corporate mainstream media goes on it. Even a lot of his critics give him credit for bringing crime down, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell you people are talking about. The numbers are the numbers. We're not pulling numbers out of our hat. We're going off numbers that are NYPD data. Sam Antal, whitecollarfraud.com, he gives you a larger view than the narrowed in view that the NYPD gives you. The NYPD will give you a 7-day period, a 28-day period, and they'll give you a year period with skewed numbers. Sam Antar steps it out a few years, right? So now you get the big picture so you can see clearly. And I think both of those matter, but I think overall when we look at crime trends, you have to bring it out. And then to focus in to fight crime, you have to zero in. Instead of what the NYPD does, they're trying to show, oh, look what we're doing by zeroing in and misrepresenting crime. So there's a lot of stuff there. So you brought that in. Then he brought up the fact of his 4 police commissioners. First New York City mayor in one term to appoint 4 police commissioners. Unheard of. Because it shows that your management skills and your appointments are horrible. Right? And he turned it into a positive somehow. He made it like it was a glorious thing. He completely brushed over the fact that Ed Caban was resigned in disgrace because his home was raided. That was the first, too. The first police commissioner's home to be raided, NYPD history by the feds. And he completely brushed that off, talked about how great of a guy Ed Caban is. Talked about how Keechon Sewell could have been there forever, but she wasn't. Doesn't explain that. Then talked about how Tom Donlin was a good guy, but he kicks him out. And now how Jessica Tisch is there because now he needed her managerial style. So he went over that. And what was the other thing? There was a couple of things there, dude. But I don't know. I was laughing the whole time. Corey Pegues said he's going to put it on his YouTube channel. So I'm looking forward to that because I want to break it down further.
That, I'll tell you, I watched that with you, and I couldn't. The best was the one person he mentioned Caban, and again, I'll say this: somebody in the chat wrote, guys, take Eric or whatever, Corey, take Eric to Jimmy's Cafe afterwards. Caban's buying. Like, that was what somebody wrote in there. I tell you, out of the whole, like, the chat as it was going on, John, not one thing was positive for Eric Adams. Not one. It was all people just furious. Some people like Corey, but they don't like Eric. Eric is, like, universally hated, and he brushes it off. He goes, oh, the NYPD, they had scandals. In our time, they had scandals. There's always a scandal. But Eric, you're the mayor. It's your scandal now. It's not the past it's your scandal. he's brushing off everything. Oh, well, Eddie Caban, he goes, brother, I got business to handle. So okay, go handle your business. You can leave. That's not how that conversation didn't go that way. And then he says, well, the reason, that she, at that time, Jeffrey Maddrey hadn't been suspended is, I don't get involved in decisions of the police commissioner. Jessica Tisch, that's her business, her investigation. Meanwhile, you know that he's up to his eyeballs in New York City Police Department business. I mean, I understand. Curtis Lee said this best, that when they were running for mayor, that Eric had an agreement with all the Democratic candidates that said, look, if you beat me, at least make me your police commissioner. So Eric, really, in the grand scheme of things, has always wanted to be the head of the police department. Now he's the mayor, so he's the de facto head. But that's what his whole MO was about. So when I saw that and the way he's talking, and like I said, Corey did it great. Just let him talk. And he sounds crazy. That's how he is. He's saying how everything is great. I mean, he says, Tom Donlin, you appointed him. He goes, did you do any vetting there? We just, brother, we had, that's the way it is. Because when he starts saying brother, by the way, that's a whole big thing with him. Because like John says, he wants to make things about race. As you know, he calls white people crackers behind closed doors, or he'll say that in front of you, depending on who you are. So when he says brother, that's what he's trying to insinuate with Corey. Because if Corey pressed a little more, Eric would have really tensed up and probably been silent. But I thought, like you said, if you want entertainment, just watch this, because you're going to watch Eric squirm and try to get out of, like, he's doing this. He's dodging all kinds of stuff, but Corey lets him talk. And if you know Eric the way we know him and the way the public really perceives him, it was classic. And it was really damning thinking about what happened recently now with Jeffrey Maddrey. Because apparently Jessica Tisch calls the shots. John, I don't know. That was the best line. I don't get involved in investigations. That's Jessica Tisch. She's the police commissioner. Really? Really?
I'm pretty sure everyone told Jessica Tisch to suspend Jeffrey Maddrey except for Eric Adams. Yep. I mean, any law enforcement official, it's very obvious that Bill Bratton and Ray Kelly are behind the scenes. Everyone's going to tell you, you're going to taint the investigation. You're going to taint the follow-up. If there's any criminality here, you're going to taint it. You have to suspend him. And if you don't, Epps has a great case, by the way. Yep. He has a great case on being mistreated and being treated improperly and not fairly. Victim of a sex crime, not being treated properly and fairly, a civil rights violation. So I thought we were about fairness and equality. I consistently hear that out of the NYPD, but then we don't see it. So there's no way that Jeffrey Maddrey, it was Tisch's decision to not suspend Jeffrey Maddrey. That came right out of Eric Adams' mouth. I don't think anybody believed him, but that was a great question. And I commend Corey for asking, because I don't think a lot of people would ask it, but it was definitely one of the questions I wanted to hear him answer. I know he's never going to tell the truth, but I still just want to hear him. I still just want to hear him answer it. So he answered it like we would expect him to answer it. But now that you're seeing it come to fruition that Jeffrey Maddrey does get suspended later on, was that Jessica Tisch's decision? No, they had no choice at that point. Now Eric Adams is like, all right, we got to do what we got to do. We got to save my face. So I thought all in all, the whole thing was hysterical. It's definitely entertainment. But no one's going to pin Eric Adams down. And I thought he it's hard to pin him down, dude. He's gonna bob and weave, and low information people are going to bite on him.
I know.
It's great.
That's his crowd, by the way, low information. But here on this show and on the Finance Unfiltered podcast, we're all about information. So I'm going to hit you all with one right here, because this is an incident that happened since, the top part of the police department, the number one priority is public safety, but not in this administration because it's full of scandals. So look at this. This is from our friend. We were just discussing Sam Antar. So here he is, Sam E. Antar, at Sam Antar on X and whitecollarfraud.com. And here's his post. So far this week, there have been at least 23 shooting victims in New York City, which is a 44% increase compared to the 16 victims during the same week in 2024, and a 53% increase compared to the 15 victims during the same week in 2023. Monday, 6 people shot at Bronx convenience store. Tuesday, 2 people shot Brownsville and 4 people shot in Canarsie. Wednesday, 10 people shot at Queens nightclub, 1 person shot in the Bronx. The NYPD does not count shooting incidents where the gunman has bad aim and misses the intended victims. The NYPD uses a Monday through Sunday week to report crime. And right here, there's the major headline: at least 10 wounded in mass shooting outside Queens nightclub, sources said. And it actually did happen. So, John, what are your thoughts about all of that? What happened? A shooting, Sam Antar's numbers. This is crazy.
I'm just waiting for Eric Adams to drop a crime is down post. I'm just waiting for the NYPD to tell us, no, crime's down. We're doing a great job out there. They're going to put the post out there about how many guns they confiscated, letting you know how many people are out there carrying illegal firearms, which is insane because those numbers they're historic because people did not carry illegal firearms on the streets of New York City when we had a Rudy Giuliani, when we had a Mike Bloomberg, when we had competent adult leadership in New York City and in the NYPD. And so what you're seeing is a huge failure in public safety, and it's coming to fruition. And unfortunately, the public's paying for it. The public's paying for it, and safety really is not their priority. How could it be? They're all under indictment. They're all wrapped up in both federal, state, and city criminal investigations. They're using overtime for purposes of sex. Now they're clamping down on the overtime for the people who are actually doing the work. I mean, there's not adult leadership in this city or in the NYPD. And unfortunately, public safety is going to continue to suffer until Eric Adams is either removed or he's voted out of office.
Yeah, there's an incident with 10 people shot in a nightclub once again, and it's like, it's every day you're seeing now crime through the roof. Right now, subway crime is, they come out with these big billboards, and then it's down 40% if you eliminate the pandemic, if you eliminate this. So it's always, listen, heck, Eli Manning would have had a great career as a Giants quarterback if we just go to those 2 Super Bowls he had, because the rest of his career was quite questionable with his numbers. But hey, let's eliminate that and just zero in on these 2 things. That's what they're doing. And it's ridiculous. I want to see his billboard. He's going to put up a big sign with big numbers in the back, try to confuse everybody, him and the governor. But you got crime in the subway, shootings in the street, and your police department's in chaos. What else can we say about that? I mean, John, how does he go forward? This is complete chaos all the way around New York City.
Yeah, he's continuing like the phrase that Mullen Bethel coined. He's running his perception management campaign, right? The perception is crime's down. The perception is the bench is deep and we have great people in integrity and leadership in the NYPD. The perception is, we're appointing John Schell in the middle of Times Square in this insanity, not because it's a great thing and we want to do it in the middle of Times Square, not because they're trying to avoid the media and the questions that are going to be asked, right? And it's the same thing when the reality is crime's up. John Schell's the absolute wrong person, and crime's continuing to rise, and Eric Adams' administration's embroiled in scandal, and the month just started. The year just started. This is early on, January 25. I think we're going to see fireworks in this administration in this month. I don't think we've seen anything yet, Sal. Nothing's going to shock me this month. Nothing. I don't know if somebody's getting collared, perp walk. I don't know if Eric Adams is stepping down, but I think we're going to see fireworks this month.
I think you're right, and I don't know what they have planned, but as we know a lot about some of these allegations and rumors in the background. Obviously, on my show, on John's show, we've presented a lot of evidence as far as facts of things that were being done, shouldn't have been done, but somehow they got away with, and now it's all catching up. It's catching up right at the end. And I think what we have 18, 17 days left until Inauguration Day. I mean, is he trying to play up for that pardon? Because now that he's embroiled, because this is what you're going to hear. I'll say this right here. I'm going to predict that you're going to hear that Eric Adams either was involved himself or knew about all this stuff that Jeffrey Maddrey and all these people in the police department were involved in. Because in the end, once again, he's the guy on top trying to act like he runs the police department and the city. He can't run both. That's why you have agency heads. So I'm predicting you're going to hear that he was involved in this, which would mean, how do you even look at this guy for a pardon when it's everything, including the way he's run his police department, and he's involved in these quid pro quo situations that he knows about? Like, what? That's what I foresee here. I don't see how anyone could think pardon this guy. I just can't.
I mean, look at Eric Adams' administration when he comes into office in 2022. Look at it today. Nobody's there. His entire upper tier, all his deputy mayors, his first deputy mayors, his right hand, his chief advisor here, his chief advisor there, his chief legal counsel, they're gone. And Eric Adams is sitting here, and the same thing is true for the NYPD. How much shuffling? This is the most shuffling we've ever seen in NYPD history. You know, this is the most shuffling. This is the most amount of cops that have left, resigned, retired, ever. This is unprecedented in history. And Eric Adams is sitting there playing the Babes in the Woods routine. He's like, I don't know what's. Oh, wow, they did what? What's going on? Oh, Eddie was doing what? Oh, you mean the nightclub I was hanging out with them with the guys I was with every night, by the way? Oh, wow. I didn't know that. You know, I'm not buying it. Anybody that's buying it is crazy. You're not paying attention. You either got the people that are supporting Eric Adams right now, they're either getting city contracts, they want city contracts, or they have high-paying city jobs, or they want a high-paying city job. Everybody else is on the outs. I mean, when you look at it, you look at guys like me and Sal. We're conservatives. Yet we're agreeing with far left people when it comes to Eric Adams. Yeah. I mean, he's the ultimate uniter. He's done more to unite New York City than anybody ever, because everyone could unite around one fact. He's corrupt.
Beyond that. And you know what? We have a couple minutes. I wanted to hit one other thing before we go. He's kept a lot of people that were suffering under that whole vaccine mandate. Eric Adams has continued it and terminated many people. Marlon Bethel was one. You yourself had to walk away. And now I know you. I saw you put something up on social media. I saw a video of a whole expose you're going to do. And it's also in regards to your law. So I don't know if you want to tell my audience a little bit about that and what's going on with that, because I thought that was pretty big, because that's another corruption scandal under Eric Adams that you're going to hear about very soon. It's going to go all over the place. So take it away, John.
Yeah, so the mandate, I'm suing over my religious exemption being denied in the mandate. And I think when you look, I've been doing a lot of research digging into court cases and testimony that's been out there, notably in the NYPD, obviously, because I'm from the NYPD and I know a lot of people in the NYPD. So I've been going through this and I've been finding the common thread that leadership has continuously perjured themselves, took illegal steps that they knew were illegal, and they're trying to distance themselves from it and put the blame on lower down people. And they did that. They succeeded, and it's a common thread. So when you look at the mandate and you look how NYPD leadership that's tied, politically connected and politically appointed, how they handled the implementation of that mandate, you could look at how they handle every other thing, whether it's a sexual allegation, whether it's stealing overtime, whether it's a racketeering allegation, whatever it is, they do the same things. They set all the systems up in place. They use all the lower down people to enforce it. And then they completely play dumb and they testify, I don't know, I'm pleading the fifth. I don't know. and they leave it down for the lower people to be wrong, just like they're doing here, where they're leaving Epps out to dry and Paul the Fall Guy Saraceno. That's exactly what it is. So yeah, any of you guys that don't follow me on social media, if you're curious about the mandate, I'm going to be putting a lot out on my social media. I don't like to discuss it on other platforms because we noticed that there's still heavy censorship around it, and I don't want to get myself demonetized. I don't want to get you demonetized. So I don't like to go in depth on it. So I use my own social media to go out and speak in depth about it. But yeah, I've been diving into these court cases and sworn testimony from NYPD officials, and it's damning and it's contradictory and it's clear as day perjury. Clear as day illegal actions were happening, same as we're seeing now. It's always the common thread, Sal. Arbitrary and capricious. That's it. That's the get stuff done team. That's their real motto, arbitrary and capricious.
Get stuff done, but we're supposed to believe by certain social media influencers that may or may not be getting paid by someone in the Eric Adams camp that Eric is now the MAGA mayor. Same guy that he said he wanted Rikers to be open with a special cell for President Donald Trump during his trial. Same guy that reject now people like you and many others that were Trump supporters and voted for Trump 3 times in New York City are now homeless, and they have no job because of this man that Eric kept enforcing. And he lost those cases in court, but he continues to appeal. That Eric Adams. And then, of course, he's the one that wanted open borders. He says the official position in New York City should be that the borders remain open. Now he wants to erase all that between a bootlicker who now, first that guy was an Antifa guy, then he was a Black Lives Matter guy, he always was an anti-police guy, then he was an Eric Adams guy, then he was a pro-police guy, and now he's a Donald Trump guy, apparently. But he hated Donald Trump. That's the guy that they have running around pressing all kinds of crazy press for Eric Adams. It's rather disgusting, but we're just here trying to open everyone's eyes. It's the people like to say, you guys have an axe to grind. But that doesn't mean we're not telling you the truth. And also, behind that axe of truth, now you see victims and witnesses coming out. The whole time it was the truth. But if you speak to certain people that speak to other people that are all involved with Eric Adams, they're going to say, we have an axe to grind. But yet, we're all telling truth. When has Eric Adams ever been honest, really? Let's be honest. So, John, what's your social so people can follow you, and also where the show is at?
Yeah, no, I use my name for everything at John D. Macari. And then the show's at The Finest Unfiltered at YouTube, at Rumble, at The Finest Cast on Twitter, and at The Finest Unfiltered on Instagram. You know, it's always a pleasure to come on here, you know, and appreciate the conversation. Yeah, but Eric Adams, he's not a good man, you know, and that's my thing. People say you have an axe to grind. I'm like, no, I'm just pointing out who he is, and he's a disgusting human. I have no hate in my heart towards Eric Adams. The stuff that he did affected my family, myself financially, but God bless me. The things he's done to so many others, like myself, like Sal, ruined Sal's good name, ruined his career, fired him, stripped him of basically everything. It's inhumane. It's incomprehensible. At the same time, he's sitting there fighting to get illegal immigrants to work. He's telling you that if you can't work, you're exploited. But he fired Sal Greco for what? For the same thing that he did, for the same thing that the entire upper echelon did. And then our good friend Marlon Bethel, a 16-year NYPD intelligence detective, an immigrant to this country, came to this country, first-generation immigrant, legal immigrant to this country, a black man, and he's terminated. You know what he's terminated for? Non-disciplinary. They never even gave him a charge. It keeps him out of work for what? I don't know. We have firefighter down in Miami, homeless. He lives down there due to Eric Adams' inaction. They've all won where they should have been back to work and reinstated. But this is 3 years later, and nobody's back to work and nobody's reinstated. And we have teachers hopping from shelter to shelter. And you're going to sit here and talk about how you respect civil rights and how you care about people and how you care about building homes and the homeless. And it's all a lie, you know, and it's the same thing. Like, you know, we pointed out a long time, Sal, his restaurant habits, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
he's supposedly a vegan. And then when he got called out that he wasn't a vegan, he changed to that he's mainly plant-based. But when you look at when you look at the restaurants he frequents, there are no vegan options. There are no plant-based options. And it's like the guy's a complete phony liar. I always I say it on my show all the time. Eric Adams is welcome to come to my house and have a cup of coffee, but we're going to have a real conversation because he does not have them. And you see it clear as day on the Corey Pugis thing. So I appreciate you having me on here.
Thanks a lot, John. You're always welcome. And for folks out there, look, we don't hate the guy, but we're going to expose him. That's just the way it is. And this man is not fit to be the mayor. He should have stepped down a long time ago. That's our opinion and opinion of many others. And with that, I'm going to say tune in soon for the next episode of the Greco Show. It's been my honor to have John on and entertain my entire audience, okay? So with that, good morning, good afternoon, and good night.